sponsored by the diocese and or the Episcopal Church of Colorado, I should say. I think it's to be correct. And I've been on one with Gordon. We went with him to Israel and Jordan a couple years ago. Also, I've been on the Camino de Santiago through France, as you've been through Portugal. And I just kind of pitch for those. If you go on the Episcopal Church of Colorado website, you can go down and flash down until it gets to pilgrimages. And I think there's only a couple right now. I think the world situation has travel kind of limited right now. No trips to Israel right now, but they're still doing, Greg Foraker, the canon, does usually at least one annual trip on the Camino, which I recommend. My objectives today, I guess, to kind of take the mystery out of pilgrimages, the good and the bad and the ugly I'll tell you about, and show you some of the details, show you the sites and the ruins where Paul evangelized, and share with you particular sites from Acts, letters of St. Paul and Revelations that to me makes the Bible real when I get to verify historically the accuracy of the Bible. And I don't know, as an engineer, questioner, it's kind of really helped me. We actually attended, Gordon, when we got back, had kind of a reunion, and he had done a whole slideshow, and he graciously let me steal what I wanted to from his presentation. But he's here today to make sure I don't mess up, I guess. Yeah. And I'm using Father Gary's handy-dandy system here. So just a little background to tell you about the, kind of the chronology of Paul. He only met Jesus after Jesus died, if you remember, on the road to Damascus, and told him to straighten up his act and quit kicking him around, and he did, and he devoted the rest of his life to doing journeys throughout Turkey, Asia, and Eastern Europe, until they had enough of him in Rome and they killed him. So this I'm going to come across to you. Kind of shows you the three journeys of Paul, and then the fourth journey to Rome to kind of vindicate himself. And we were in, there's Turkey, the western part of Turkey, our tour took us, and then all throughout Greece, which is that peninsula coming down. And then that little gap up there, that's the Bosphorus River, the Straits of Bosphorus. It's a ton of traffic on it, ship traffic, taking you from the Black Sea ultimately into the Mediterranean. That's Istanbul. So we started in Istanbul, flew into there. Then after we toured that, we flew down to Izmir, which is used to be Smyrna. And from there, we took a bus all around that part of Turkey to see the 7 churches of Asia. I don't. And then we went back to Izmir, back to Istanbul, flew over to Thessalonica and into Greece, and did a bus around there, and then ended up in Athens. So that's basically the trip. 38 of us went on the trip, and all 38 lived to tell about it. And when you go to some of these ruins, it's pretty treacherous. And everybody was encouraged if they needed to have walking sticks and things, so everybody hung in there. But this was at the end of the trip, and we're still smiling. And see Bishop Kim in front. Our guides were her husband, Mark Rutherford in the back, Gordy Tucker, of course, and then the guy in the green there is Canon Greg Foraker, who really handles a lot of the pilgrimages for the diocese. So that was our group, and that was at the end of the trip. And then kind of the anatomy of, kind of taking some of the mystery out of these trips. It takes local participation. So the fellow on the left is Orham, and he was certified. These guides have to be certified. They go to school. They're licensed. So they really know what they're talking about. And he also gave you political commentary whether you wanted it or not. referred to Erdogan, their president, as President Jerk, I think it was. And
he who shall not be named.
yeah. And you get these, you got 2 hours on a bus trip. On the other side, that's Raina. She kind of was quiet and let us do our thing. She was the Greek tour guide. And she had this, she's more arthritic than me, so when she pointed, her finger went this way, and I never knew. After a while, I figured out it's this digit, this knuckle you look at. It took a while.
She was also about 4'10". So following her through crowds, you're like, where's the flag? I can't.
In a bag lay, she had 2 bags. Everything she had was in 2 bags. And honestly, when we went through customs there, we flew in, we were told to kind of gather, and that was one of the first ones, I guess, through customs. And this lady comes, she keeps walking up next to me, and she's carrying 2 bags, this little lady. I thought she wanted money. And then I found out, she's our guide, so I'm glad I didn't give her anything. Gee, it's embarrassing. And you need a bus. This is the bus this is the Greek bus, but nice buses. And you need a place to stay. This was, to me, one of the nicer places we stayed in Delphi. Any of us would be happy to stay there, I think, if you were traveling. And not that it was a bad place, but this was my most unfavorite hotel because it was so big. And these are the buses lined up in the morning to take everybody. So typically, you get breakfast. It's a buffet, very nice. And then lunch would be on the road. We'd pay. They'd pick a place. We'd go, have some choice. And then dinner was always a big buffet. So you can imagine the mess hall that this place had. And it was just not my favorite, but it was functional.
It was like 30 different tour groups there all at once. And so it was noisy and it was a little chaotic.
Yeah. Wouldn't stay there again. But I couldn't complain about the accommodations in any
But that
other
was
place.
the only one. Everywhere else we stayed didn't have that feel to it.
Yeah, I agree. First stop, Istanbul. Fabulous town, 16 million people. It exists, half of it's on the Asia, on one side of the Bosphorus River, and the other half is in Europe. So kind of neat place. We went to the Hagia Sophia, the Holy Wisdom. It was a church, I guess, Acta 300. I think the dates, Gordy, you provided those, back in 300. But this church was built in 500, 6th century. And it was a church until the 1400s when the Ottomans come and they decide to make it a mosque. And then it was, I guess there was liberalization in Turkey in the 1930s, and they converted it to a museum. And then, again, President Jerk, I guess, decided in 2020 it would go back to a mosque. At least that's what Orem said. And so when we visited, it was a mosque. So we had to pay, but we could only go up on the mezzanine. But really beautiful. Hard to believe. The span of that dome was, 200 and some feet. I mean, just huge that in the year 500, as an engineer, they could figure out how to build that, and it would stand up. And the neat thing about it was, again, we're up in a mezzanine, and the mosque is below it. But the neat thing about it was, I guess, when it got liberalized in the 1900s, they started discovering that there was these wonderful mosaics from the 10th, 12th century, and they had been covered over by the Muslims, but then they peeled it back. And so far, they haven't replastered, so it was pretty incredible mosaics that we got to see that had been there for, again, 1,000 years. And then, of course, we went to the Blue Mosque, which I guess the Sultan wanted his own mosque too. So this was built in the 1600s. And it was more impressive physically, more modern. The women have to cover their heads there, and I guess you could wear pants, but you had to no shorts in this for men either, out of respect. But just the beautiful light. It's just pretty much natural light coming in with all the glass, and it's the blue glass is why they call it the Blue Mosque. And then outside there was a kind of a courtyard. They were giving out Qurans there, so I got my own, in whatever language you wanted. And then we start the journey of, in Revelations, the first 3 chapters, describes the 7 churches of Asia. And this is where, get this right, God tells Jesus, who's dead, to go tell his angels, to go tell John a vision of for the churches in Asia to get their act together, basically. And what I learned from this was Jesus and God are not, they don't believe in grade inflation. They don't believe in participation ribbons. They tell it like it is. So these are the 7 churches: the Pergamon, Thyatira, Sardis, Smyrna, which we did not get to see, ran out of time, Philadelphia, and Laodicea, and Ephesus. Of course, Ephesus you've all heard. So those are the 6 of the 7 churches we went to. And in Revelations, and I've condensed this for our, I'm not going to read the Revelations, but these are kind of the punchlines. And, they say to Ephesus, repent, do the things you did first. In other words, you've fallen off the wagon. Laodicea, you're lukewarm, you're neither hot nor cold. I want to spit you out of my mouth. They've got a pretty rotten grade there, on probation, I would say. Philadelphia, you kept my word and you've not denied my name, so good. Sardis, you have a reputation for being alive, but you're dead. And then Thyatira, you tolerate the woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess. Pergamon, you live where Satan has a throne, and I'll show you that in a minute. Yet you are true to my name. So you're kind of tolerating the Roman, the Greek gods and worshiping those kind of things. And then Smyrna, I know your afflictions and poverty, yet you're rich. So maybe 2 of them got passing grades, maybe, I don't know. First we went to Ephesus, and this is what you see today. And I guess and Gordy could help here, but they've put it back together as they have found it, I guess, and replaced some pieces. I'm always impressed when they replace the pieces, they make it a different color so you can tell what's original and what's not. Kind of neat. I learned that from Gordon. He taught me a lot. This is in Ephesus. Paul spent about 3 years there, and his big deal was that they have all these, like Artemis and the silversmiths would make all these idols, and he didn't believe in that. So he was basically interrupting a lot of commerce there, which is why he kept getting kicked out of places, because he would get on the people who are trying to make money, as he would think, not in accordance with what God wanted. So go to Ephesus, and this is the Library of Celsus. And Gordon, you said this was rebuilt like in the 70s, right? Recently. But it's pretty, really impressive. And it reminds me of the treasury in Jordan, yeah. Petra, I think. The Acadian Way, I guess Ephesus was a harbor, but due to earthquakes and siltation, the water is 4 miles away now. And then what really impressed me was, hey, where are the churches? I'm like looking around. And what you would see is, I'll call it graffiti, but there would be signs of the cross. This one looks like the Pennsylvania Dutch kind of signs. And it would be religious Christian symbols, but they kind of had to, put them where they could get them, I guess. And there wasn't, at that time, an acknowledgement of a physical church.
But it did sort of tell other fledgling Christians that there was a presence there and that they could look for other people. And they were just carved into the stone.
Kind of like gangs do today.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, kind of symbols, hey, we're here. And then, again, what you find, they said this was the Church of St. Mary from the 4th to 7th century. So what I showed you before was like the agora and the parts they recreated or rebuilt, put together like the town central. And then around the perimeter, we didn't drive anywhere, we just walked. Once you get away from the stuff that was more from the time of Christ, you begin to see religious buildings. This would be the 5th to 7th century, and of course it's kind of torn down. And here's the bishop's palace, kind of a fixer-upper, but foundation's still there from the 5th century. That just impressed me. Yeah. And then, not that we had any Catholics with us, but I find Greg Foraker always, he took us to Lourdes. He always tries to give you a little bit of the what every religion thinks. This was House of Mary, and what happened here was it's believed that John went to Ephesus, that he took Jesus' mother to protect her there. And then it would have been like in early 1800s, there was a German nun who had apparitions about, I see Mary's house, I see the foundation, it used to look like XYZ. And I guess she was convincing enough that some priest went and they found the foundation that she described. It's hard to see here, but along about maybe 2 or 3 feet up that wall on the left side, you actually could see the original foundation. Found that. So the priests have built a house per her description, and then I guess 3 popes have been there and blessed it. So who knows? You have to have faith, I guess. But it was interesting to see that and see how Ephesus still was kind of a center of religion, even in modern times. Go through this. Laodicea kind of looks the same but different. You had the main roads, and Agora, the places where the city center basically would be, the market, yeah. And then it had a synagogue there, and it had the original mosaic floor, and it would ripple, it wouldn't be flat from age. We weren't allowed to walk on it, but we could certainly see it. A North Theater that hasn't had much restoration, and then they actually have a West Theater that they actually conduct shows and things like that currently. And then Hierapolis was kind of a neat ruin. It wasn't part of the 7 churches, kind of diverting here, but it was, I saw it referenced in Colossians, letter to the Colossians. So there, again, no church as such, but we know that Paul went there and formed a congregation. Philadelphia, you start to see this kind of deal. This is a church. I think there was only one column that went back to biblical times that they showed us off in the woods. But the actual part was like kind of a park. Here are the columns of a church from 600, that would be St. John. And the arrow here that Gordy had kind of shows you how the city's built up around it. Some of these were that way. You had to walk through the towns, and then there'd be no more than maybe a block or a park, and that would be the ruins. Sardis was kind of interesting in that you have a temple to Artemis, and off to the side you see this red building, and this got reconstructed, I think in the 19th century, 20th century. But this is a church you could walk through it. And actually had, because of the Roman influence, I guess had a bathroom in the back, troughs and things like that. I guess that's for long services. And but it was kind of interesting to see they go back to where there were, to me, Greek, Roman ruins, but they build their church next to it. Once, I guess, Constantinople got religion as the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire, and then he allowed and encouraged Christianity. In Sardis, this is a synagogue and a gymnasium back from that time. And then we actually got to see them. It's kind of neat. You got some totally Muslim country. So you got Muslims restoring a Jewish synagogue. And then this is a close-up of the work they had done.
And what they said was that they got tiles from the same areas that the tiles were originally from. They weren't obviously old tiles, but it took hours to do this one little square that they were doing, and the whole floor. It's the largest synagogue outside of Israel, right? Is that right? I think so. I think that's what he said anyhow. But it's huge, and you can see where they have done some of the restoration, and then other places where they haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But it was an American, wasn't it? Leading
It was, well, she went to school at Boston, right, college, but she was from there, I think. And then, but she had been educated in the US, yeah.
But
She was kind of a boss.
some of what we saw throughout were projects that were being funded from the United States or other parts of Europe or wherever. So there was always a mixture of people working on the various ruins.
Thyatira, is that how you pronounce it, Bishop? Okay. Lucky. So you got basically a square block of rubble, not a whole lot spilt back up. And here we were, this is again, your Bishop Kim, I think, reading from Revelations about Jezebel or whatever. Yeah, it was. And then, but that was right in the city. But there were objects and everything around there. I just didn't get a good depiction of it. So you wonder where all these things, why aren't they still standing? Well, they got a lot of earthquakes over there. And just to make the trip seem realistic, we got to experience that. And we actually had earthquake. This is not our hotel. Gordon got this picture, but this is maybe 100 miles from Izmir, and where we were at night. But it was pretty violent. We were on the 4th floor. About 10:30, I'd gone to sleep, and I thought Melissa was trying to, like something was bad. She was trying to wake me up. I mean, you said you were on the 7th floor, right?
I was up higher, and upstairs, I didn't get that sensation of shudder. It was like the whole building was swaying.
Yeah. And so I go back to our buddy Orham, who in all his diatribe in the bus was telling us about, oh yeah, and they have corruption here, and they pay off all the inspectors so they can use inferior equipment when they build the materials. And that flashback came to me as I'm sitting there rocking, like, oh my gosh.
Because I'm thinking, oh good, Turkey's a country where they have so many earthquakes.
Yeah.
They know they've built the building so it'll sway, right?
Yeah.
And then the next day he's like, oh, there's all this corruption, it could just fall down.
Yeah. Thank you.
Reassuring.
That was, we were in Izmir, and the stars were, I guess the epicenter was in Istanbul up there. So then we have one more we went to. We can get there. Here we go. Pergamon, which I thought was kind of the neatest one.
Yeah.
It's way up on the hill. This is an archaeological artist rendition of what it might have looked like at the time. Very, very protected. See the theater there on the side of the hill. And to get there, you have to, there's the town below it. But you take just like you're going skiing. And then you get up there, and it's just some really, really, really interesting ruins. And this is where theater, let's flip through this a little bit. Very, very steep. Temple to Trajan. And then this is the great altar of Zeus. So, they refer to where Satan's throne is. So I guess that's what they're referring to, I'm not sure. And I understand, I've seen pictures, there was more to it, but the Germans took it to Berlin. So they have it in the museum. So anyway, so that was about half the trip. And then we move on to, fly over to Greece. And we missed, as I say, we had to miss Smyrna. I can't remember, was it Conflict? The Seventh Church, Smyrna, which is in Izmir. So we were staying there, but
There's a traffic issue.
we ran out of time, and Orham was on his own agenda, maybe. Yeah, I thought a little of that, but anyway, it was all good. And so here's Paul's third journey, and we kind of followed that. We went into Thessaloniki, they call it Nika, they call it in the Bible, yeah. And then, then we went over to Philippi. That was just a bus trip back to Thessaloniki. And then we went over to Berea for a quick trip. And then we actually went down to Delphi and saw a museum and ruins that weren't part of the mission. And then we went to Corinth, just to give you a sense of how much we traveled. And then finally in Athens. And I think we went counterclockwise, he went clockwise, but there was logistics reasons for what we did, I'm told. So Thessalonica, the Thessalonians, if you will, modern city, it's the second largest city. I think Greece has Athens of 4 million. This is about 1 million people. And but we just got on the bus, but I still took some cool pictures hanging out of the bus. I guess we didn't have time to stop, but this is a rotunda. Galerius was the emperor in the 4th century. He kicked the Persians out. So they built this, they think, as a mausoleum for him. And ultimately it became a church in the 5th century. And it survived. It's built in 306, Common Era. So it's that old. And it survived because the walls are 20 feet thick. So it's pretty cool. And then, of course, the Ottomans took over in the 15th century, 1400s. And this is the White Tower, kind of a famous building. So we stopped long enough to get a picture out of the bus. That was good. But Philippi is really where we're heading, which again is maybe a couple-hour bus ride to the east, getting up pretty far north. And one of the stops we did, from Acts you can read it, but Lydia of Thyatira. And of course, Thyatira, okay, that was over in Asia, but Paul meets up with Lydia, vendor of purple cloth, I think it is. And this was a church recently built to commemorate that. And it's built along the stream where they believe Paul did the baptism. And it's a really pretty inside, but it's modern to me. I don't know. I like this. I want to know where it happened, not necessarily something cute they built. That's just me. But really, really beautiful facility built kind of in the round like a lot of Greek Orthodox churches are. And then they had a stream there, and then we reaffirmed our baptismal vows, and then, but we didn't baptize each other, we
Blessed each other.
blessed each other in the water. Yeah, it was a technical term there. You can never get rebaptized. I learned that. But I blessed Melissa, she blessed me, we did that. It was kind of moving, kind of neat.
It was very moving. I thought that was, to me, that was the most, I don't know, spiritual moment of the trip, was when, we were reaffirming and blessing each other in this location where the first woman theoretically had been baptized by Paul.
Yeah. So then we get to the ruins. This is the agora or marketplace, and this is where I think the story goes that Paul was a woman that had some mental issues. Maybe she was possessed, but because of this, she was telling fortunes, and she was a slave. And so our slaveholder's making a lot of money with her telling fortunes. So Paul fixes that. He does an exorcism, right? And now she's okay. So Paul and Silas, they get hauled out of the marketplace. They get taken to the theater. It's in the Bible. And guess where they're going? They're going to jail. So they end up going to jail. And I don't know, Gordon. Do you think this was the jail or just, but it was a room, an apartment or something in the ruins, and they said it was the jail. But we know he's jailed there somewhere anyway. And of course, the story goes that he's jailed, and they have an earthquake that, while they're in there, and it opens up the gates, and the guard thought he was going to get blamed for it because they must have run off. So he's ready to commit suicide, and they say, no, we're still here. So the guard takes him home. They baptize the whole family, convert them. And then they find out that Paul and Silas are really Roman citizens. So for that reason, they're exonerated. I'm not sure the technicality there, but that was the story. So they're let go and they get kicked out and they move on. You're going to see a pattern here, okay? Okay. So then they go from there to Thessalonica. Then they go to Berea, which is just a little bit to the west. And this was, there you go, a little bit. That green dot there, a little bit to the west. And they go there, and this, I don't know, I call it a pocket park. I don't know, I don't want to minimize it. But it was on the main road through the little town. They did have the stones from the original road, Roman road. So it's in that area that they went and preached. And the story goes, I won't read it all, but they had pretty good luck there. They're getting some momentum. But then the boys of Thessalonica learn that they're over there causing trouble, so they come to get them, and then they run and leave there, and they move on. So they didn't get arrested there. A side trip we took, and this to me was one of the coolest, but Metaura is, I'll show you where it is. It's kind of in the center of Greece, up in the mountains. And there are, I call them trapuis, in South America they'd be called, or mesas. What's the geological term, would you say, Gordy? Hoodoos? Okay. With these, huge masses. You're up about maybe 1,000 feet in some cases, or 2,000, or maybe at least 1,000 feet up. And what you can see are monasteries. And they built 24 of these between the 12th and 16th century. And and as an engineer and a constructor, you go, how'd you get the brick up there, And you can kind of, on the side, you can see like switchbacks all the way. I mean, it was probably carrying up one brick at a time, just incredible. We went to that one. I think we went to two of the monasteries and toured them. And then, this was to me just amazing, both geologically, but then physically, how you built them. And then we toured them. And this is so Melissa in her cute skirt, and her pants coming out, they would hand out skirts. So every place you go would have a different ritual or different requirement. Now, Mary Ann's here with her beautiful blue skirt, it's 40. And then you give them back as you leave. But you didn't have to wear, any head covering. We did go to Delphi, and it was just a beautiful place. It had a really interesting museum there that we toured. And this is where we got our 30 minutes of freedom. And we got to walk, on our own, leave the hotel. The beautiful hotel I showed you was there. And we got to go and walk up and see some pretty sights there about dusk. It was nice. And then this is again, of that era of Paul, Temple of Apollo and the theater. And then we walked up to, they had a stadium there, still there from first century. And then the treasury, it's pretty buildings. And then we went to Corinth, and Corinth is, let's see here, okay. So the story there goes, it was Sunday morning, so we're going to have service. So Mark Rutherford, this is the bishop's husband, and I, we're kind of ahead of the crowd. And Raina, with this finger, she says, go over there and get that spot. Okay, that one. So we go run because there was another bus that was unloading, and that guide wanted that spot too. It was the favorite spot. So we beat a bunch of German Catholics out for the spot. And, I'm with the bishop's husband, so I guess it's okay, but I just wondered, what would Jesus have done? I don't know. I just don't know. Anyway, it was a beautiful place to have communion, and it had benches there. And then you can see over here, that's the German Catholics. They got the second tier. And then off to the left was a beautiful Greek Orthodox church, and they're ringing the bells. And it was just kind of a neat environment.
They were like, up at the Greek Orthodox Church, they were projecting out into the area, which we did. I mean, we were at other places where there were Greek Orthodox churches, and they weren't doing that. But this was like the sound system out to the whole area.
Yeah,
so you were hearing what they were doing. You were hearing, I thought they were Lutheran, but whatever, the Germans singing.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
We were singing. So it was just this, and it was in the shadow of, a Greek goddess.
Yeah,
and so it was just this interesting mix of people all on.
Yeah, it was cool. So again, you have a lot of ruins, a lot of pieces left. Main roads there, and you can see the town is right around it, Corinth, very, very close. And then one thing that I really identify with is the Temple of Apollo, but in the book of Acts, this is where, get my story straight here, it was God told Paul that no one is going to attack you here, that you're safe here, you will not be harmed. And it was true. He got arrested there, but he goes to, he stays there for about 1.5 years teaching. But then he goes, they finally, I guess he was just irritating the Jews enough that they brought him to the Bema. And this is a big platform where I guess you take your grievances, or the authorities would talk to you, that kind of thing. It was basically a court. And it's still there, the Bema. And it's documented, we saw it documented in a couple of different areas in Greek government history. And anyway, they go there to Gallio, who is kind of the proconsul. He's the Pontius Pilate of this area, I guess. And he says in there, in a sense, your claim involves questions about words and names of your own law, meaning Jewish law. Settle the matter on yourselves. So they let him go. So it came to, I guess it was true. He was safe there. So he didn't get arrested in that town. It's pretty cool. And then
Called into court.
And then a side trip we took was the Corinth Canal. And this was actually, I read a lot about the Panama Canal. The French were trying to build this, and one of the guys that was investing in that gave up on the Panama Canal, and he went and he built this canal. And the Corinth Canal it probably saves a couple hundred miles of travel, but it's only 4 miles long, and it's only 80 feet wide. So you can't get today much of a ship through it. And they were actually had to shut down their dredging it or something, we were there. So it's not even open to the public, but it's 300 feet deep. So you got this kind of worthless ditch. What do you do with it? So in my opinion, here's another view. See if I can get, I don't know if I can get the sound. Can you do that from there? So you find enlightenment over the Corinth Canal. Can I start it?
No, sorry. Everything is working, should turn out of these speakers, but it's not.
Will we try to click it?
Do you have to play?
Nope.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Bungee
Anyway,
jumping. It was bungee jumping.
yeah, the fellow bungee jumps from there.
People going off the side
Here
of
you
that
go,
bridge.
here you go.
Oh, here we go.
And I blew it up. Yeah. So for €100, you could do this too.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, I thought he was praying at first, but actually he was pushed off of this because he ain't gonna go otherwise. He had to pay for this. This guy found God in that moment.
Gives me meaning to leap of faith.
Yeah. This is why Larry Hitt makes us sign releases before we go on these trips, I think.
Seems like a lot of hard stuff you might run into rather than.
Yeah. I did not want to try this. I didn't need it.
It's wider than it looks.
And then finally Athens, the Acropolis at night, and this gives you a little proximity. That was our hotel. So, you know, really, most of Athens is sleazy, but we had good location there. And then Crechion, would you say? Is it? Crechion, dedicated to Athena. And then it has, the statues. And I understand, I think these are replicas because British Museum took those. But,
They took the frieze.
yeah. And then the Parthenon, a lot of, and then overlooking that, they still have restored the ancient agora. And this is where Paul, in Acts, was preaching and doing his thing. This is where a lot of philosophers hung out. And so some of the authorities and philosophers heard him speaking, and they actually called it babbling. He was speaking or babbling, and they invited him to the Areopagus, which is a hill where people came to speak and spread their wisdom or preach or whatever. So they take him up there, and that's the hill there. You can see a bunch of us up there on that hill. And that's where he preached about the divine not being like gold, silver, or stone, and not an image made in man's design or skill. So again, he was always bashing the idol makers, and because they were profiting from this. And anyway, ultimately he teaches there. This is like the step. They don't let you use these steps anymore. I don't know how long ago those were put in, but for 2,000 years, people have been going on this hill, and then you kind of get a perspective from the hill up to the Acropolis in the neat area. And then we end up, the picture I showed you before, that's where we actually took that photo, and turned out to be a very nice trip. And so I stole your slide here. Oh, it was cute. Anyway.
And then the other part, just real quickly, was that on a few evenings, not every evening.
Please stand up so we can hear you better.
Yep. On a few of the evenings, we gathered in the evening, and we had sort of a discussion about what historians and biblical scholars believe are the writings of Paul, what they don't think are the writings of Paul. The bishop's husband is a student of Paul, I don't know.
Paulian scholar.
Paulian scholar. And he definitely was putting forth the thing that if you take out the writings that they do not believe were written by Paul, and you look only at the writings of Paul, that Paul, in fact, was preaching a very inclusive, very radically inclusive church, and that a lot of the things that people shudder sometimes when they read and say this was by Paul, or try to use as rationale for excluding various people didn't actually come from Paul. So there were, I don't know, 4 evenings, maybe 3 evenings?
Yeah, about 4, I think, and we
of
broke
the
up in
whole
groups.
trip Where
Yeah.
we gathered in the evening and broke up into groups and had more religious discussions.
Yeah. It was good. Yeah, it's fun. It's interesting because yesterday a men's group in here, no, I don't think, well, Jim was here, Jim Ball, but Tom Price did a discussion on misogyny and the recurrence of it today with the political right and stuff like that. We kind of got into a little politics. It's kind of interesting, and everybody there blamed it on Paul, and because Jesus never, called out women, listen to your husband and all that kind of stuff. And I said, well, all I know is he's a great evangelist because I saw the franchises he opened up in the territory, and I'll leave, and I heard Mark's arguments, and maybe so, but I know what I read too when you read the words. Anyway, it was he definitely, you can tell that Paul did a lot of good work to spread the word and create the churches and the beginnings of Christianity. So.
And also there's somewhere a book that one of the people who was with us was a photographer. And so she took lots of wonderful pictures and she put them together in a book. And so I brought the book if you just want to zoom through. I think it only got in the last 2 rows and then around the back, but nonetheless, it's here.
Yeah. And I will say on every one of these we've been on, I feel like I'm being pushed. And to the point where I'm not happy during this, I will say this. I only got 15 minutes. I got 30 minutes here. I wanted to hang out and see more. And the same in Israel and Jordan. But when you get back, you realize how much you got to see, that it was really worth it. And, the trips aren't about $6,000, I think. That included airfare and all of the meals, the 2 meals a day, and all of the tours. You pay to go in every one of these facilities. And we just walk on in because it's already been handled for us. So as trips go, I think a trip through the diocese, you can't beat it for price to go and see all that. And certainly you can't beat it for the quantity of information you're going to get in a short period of time. So anyway, any more questions?
Did you have like a reading list or something so that you could get some knowledge before you went?
Yeah, we had Zoom meetings. We had Zoom meetings before we went. And we were given different things to read, and like Gordy did a presentation at 1 or 2 of the meetings to give us some archaeological background and whatever, and the bishop's husband sort of gave some background on Paul. So yes, they were done sort of via Zoom, plus here's some readings if you would like to do them.
Yeah. And they had I think it was about 4 Zooms maybe, or 5. A lot of it was like,
Logistics.
the physical logistics, what to pack and all that kind of stuff, what kind of money to have. And then a lot of it was spiritual. And then there was a retreat. I didn't go to it.
Right.
Down at
Capital, what's it called?
Cathedral Ridge. Yeah, Cathedral Ridge. Yes.
And they did a retreat also before the Camino walk.
Yeah,
So
we did that one. Yeah.
about 3 weeks before you go on the trip, they have a retreat so you can meet people face to face.
Yeah. Now, Becky, you did with the diocese.
It was a little different. We were supposed to do the footsteps of Paul. We were supposed to go to Israel and Greece, and that was about 9 or 10 days before the war started. The war started, and then 9 or 10 days we were supposed to leave. So they quickly changed everything around, and we ended up doing Greece instead of Israel. And then part of the trip was also in Rome and Assisi.
Okay.
So the way they did the trip in Greece, we did it in the reverse. So we landed in Thessaloniki and we did pretty much everything you had talked about, but in reverse. I think for me, besides the rebaptizing, but that's not the blessing in the water, I thought was pretty moving. One of the most spectacular things in Colorado, I think we're used to seeing spectacular vistas. What I thought is we're taking this bus basically from the northern part of Greece all the way down to Athens. So we're kind of traversing most of the country from north to south, the direction we took it. And the guides are amazing. I mean, anyone can be a guide in the United States. They practically have their PhDs in history and archives. It's amazing. and their English is actually very good too. But anyway, as we're going, it was one of our longer driving days, and she talked about the two Cs, S-E-A. They have the green sea and the blue sea, and I remember coming down, and these are the hills. It's not like I-70 either, so you try not to, when you look out, you don't look at the road. The driver was great, and the bus was great, but it's not like I-70. Anyway, so as we're coming down the hill, there was the sea of green. There were a million, literally a million olive trees.
Yes, 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 yes.
And that the government owns the land, but it's like a co-op for the farmers to grow the olives that become olive oil mostly. It was amazing, and then way out, you could see the blue sea, right? So the ocean's way out there. It was just a magnificent view, and of course, my camera did not do it justice. Overcast day, but your eye, that was really quite wonderful, I thought.
Yes.
Yeah,
And we also had, we had Eucharist on the beach. Did you do that at sunset?
no,
We weren't on the beach ever.
we didn't find the
No,
beach.
okay, I know
We weren't allowed to go to the beach.
Anyways, I have more things that happened really, but, yeah, so, Greece was pretty amazing. I really enjoyed it. Probably more than Israel, maybe, because I just thought the topography and the
Yeah.
vegetation was so amazing.
And then from those olive trees, you have olives every morning, lunch and dinner, feta cheese, great
It
bread,
was amazing, it was amazing.
both in Turkey and
But at towards the
Greece.
end of that trip was when Bishop Kim and her husband were like, we need to do this, but differently. And I think that was the genesis of your trip and how that happened. And
Okay.
Mark was gonna be, yeah. So it was a great, it had different dynamics, I don't want to talk about it. I mean, I can, but not right now. It's not my trip. Yeah, Greece was amazing, I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thanks for putting that together.
Thanks.
Well, there was a woman, well, so both of